Last time that you were here, maybe 3 years ago or something?
A couple years ago, yeah.
Thank you for coming anyways. It's good to see political representation up here.
You have some great political representation up here full time. But,
definitely, but obviously on a bigger scale, the Prime Minister, obviously. So thank you for coming, first of all. And I hate to go back to the question, but I also kind of like it. The SNC-Lavalin scandal, obviously, lots of questions. Another follow-up. So you just mentioned how, on the last answer that you gave to Cody over there, you were saying how you were protecting the jobs, right? That's been the common narrative. You're protecting the 9,000 jobs that SNC employs across Canada and in Quebec. Well, the SNC-Lavalin CEO said this week he never raised the issue of jobs with you and your team, yet that's what everyone seems to be saying, is this and that's the reason for all of this. So how does that work? And then just a little follow-up there. So if nothing inappropriate really happened, why have 2 former ministers quit, your staff member quit, your clerk quit, and another MP the other day quit? It just doesn't seem to add up, and I think I don't think I'm the only one in this room that thinks that. Thank you.
Okay. Sure. Let's have to go back, because I think a lot of people I've spoken to aren't exactly sure what this whole thing is about. And at the simplest possible level, there's a question of the Attorney General of Canada has an opportunity when a company is facing criminal charges for behavior in the past to say, instead of applying criminal charges, let's give you massive penalties and financial sanctions instead, and not cause you to go through the challenges of criminal sanctions, which have direct impact not just on your ability to do business in Canada, but your ability to do business around the world. And in the Lavalin situation, there were some terrible, terrible decisions made by a former board of directors, by former leadership of the company, that were then fired, and are some on the way to jail. And the company has worked very hard over the past few years to try and clean up its act, and has done significant jobs on that. Now, there are 10,000 or so Lavalin jobs right across the country, 9,000, 10,000, in all sorts of different places around the country. And if the company were to go through full criminal prosecutions, those jobs absolutely could be at risk. So, one of the things that we looked at, because one of our responsibilities, what people expect of their government, is to try and say, okay, how are we going to protect workers who had nothing to do with the bad decisions made by the leaders of the company, and we don't want the workers to be penalized for it. So we said there is this tool called deferred prosecutions that is not letting the company off. It is making sure there are consequences, but in a way that doesn't necessarily punish the workers. Now, we had discussions with the Attorney General through the course of the fall on this exact issue. The Attorney General, the former Attorney General, as she said in her testimony, was directly told by me that it was her decision to make. But at the same time, it's also a decision that can be visited and revisited all the way up to the end of the trial. And because of that, we kept having discussions about it, because we really didn't want to see all these jobs potentially at risk, and yes, potentially lost. So the former Attorney General and I and our office have a bit of a difference of opinion on whether or not the conversations we continued to have, even after she, Jody Wilson-Raybould, the former Attorney General, made her decision, whether or not they were appropriate decisions to continue to have. And on that, we heard testimony from the clerk and from my former principal secretary and from others that say there was no inappropriate pressure. We heard testimony from her that said there was inappropriate pressure. And that's a bit of a, well, that's obviously a disagreement, and I respect very much that the former Attorney General felt that things were inappropriate, but I disagree. But these are the kinds of calls you have to make in government, where you're trying to do multiple things at the same time. Protect jobs and, of course, protect our institutions. So, in the process that has unfolded, one of the limitations that the former Attorney General was facing was that because of cabinet confidentiality, which is the fact that members of cabinet don't get to talk publicly about decisions that are taken or policy issues that are discussed, combined with the fact of attorney-client or solicitor-client privilege, which, because Jody Wilson-Raybould was the Attorney General to Canada, or the government's lawyer, meant that we were wrapped up in issues of privilege, of that privilege as well. So, the former Attorney General was in a position where she actually couldn't speak to what she had felt she went through because of those limits. Now, obviously, that doesn't seem fair. So we took what is for any government very rare, so as to actually never happened before, that we waived both solicitor-client privilege and cabinet confidentiality so she could speak fully to what she experienced as Attorney General in regards to the SNC-Lavalin file. And she did that for a number of hours at the Justice Committee, a committee that studied the issue and heard from witnesses over the course of 5 weeks. That is sort of where we stand right now. And Jody Wilson-Raybould and Selena Caesar-Chavannes and Dr. Jane Philpott have made decisions about their own positioning and their own perspective on this that I absolutely respect. But to a certain extent, I disagree with. Now, given this situation, it has had a Justice Committee looking into it. It is having an Ethics Commissioner looking into it as well, because we have an Ethics Commissioner who's an officer of Parliament to make sure that regardless of the partisan discussions going on, there is an objective look at what actually happened and not. We trust those processes. Of course, we're hearing an awful lot about this right now, both because it is an issue that goes to fundamental governance, that balance between respecting institutions and doing the job of protecting jobs that Canadians expect us to do and growing the economy. But also because we're in a political situation, as we saw over the past couple of days, 30 hours of voting, where we have opponents across the way who actually don't want us to be talking about anything else except this. I mean, we haven't even had a debate on the budget. And usually, regardless of the government, a budget that lays out the economic forecast and the path of the country and the programs we're investing in is a pretty big thing for parliamentarians to weigh in on. We have a situation where the Conservatives don't even want to talk about it right now and don't want anyone else talking about it, so they're trying to amplify this particular discussion. At one point, I've sort of said, well, we're going to have to agree to disagree on these various perspectives. We're going to have to keep focusing on the things that really matter most to Canadians in their daily lives. Part of which is, yes, respect for our institutions and the rule of law, but as was said many times throughout this, the rule of law has been entirely upheld. Our institutions continue to stand strong in this country. There was no breaking of laws anywhere in this, and nobody is saying that. So we also have to get to the business of governing. We also have to get at the business of investing in Canadians and continuing to grow the economy as we have over the past few days. And that is very much what we're going to continue to focus on. And Canadians, conveniently perhaps, will have the opportunity in a few months to make a choice. To look at the entire record of this government, to look at the plans we have for the next mandate, to look at the plans our opponents have for our economy, for our future, and make a choice. Because that is what an election is. It's a choice between leaders, it's a choice between teams, and it's a choice between plans for how to continue to grow the economy and give people opportunities. And I look forward to that opportunity for Canadians to make that choice.